that we preferred evil over incompetence every time. I want to talk about two things, because this debate is about 84 years. It is not about the first 15 years of those 84 years, it's about the entirety of those 84 years. I want to talk about Ireland, firstly, where we were in 1926, where we are in 2010 and how we got there. And then secondly, I want to talk about Fianna Fáil, the place it holds in the development of Ireland and our debt to them. Firstly, to Ireland. The social and economic evolution Ireland has undergone in the last 85 years has been both astounding as much as it has been misunderstood. Numerous factors obviously have been to play, not least of which was the global tide of social and technological change. But we need to recognize the influence of parties and of policy and of politics here. Because if all that ever mattered was global influence, then every country in the world would evolve at the same pace. The changes that have come to Ireland are a result of a cumulative effect of numerous policies, numerous initiatives through the course of time. No, thank you. Both macro, micro, small and big, widely remembered and totally forgotten. The evolutionary change, no thank you, has led us forward and yes, on occasion, has led us backwards. No thank you. So we need to look at what was good and what mattered. The social maturation of Ireland from a conservative, rural and Catholic land to the liberal, urban, secular European nation, no thank you, that we have achieved today was the fact that we could now take our place among the nations of the world has been a huge step forward and has come about, no thank you, because of a number of factors. Yes, it's because the church has demised in its influence. Yes, it is because of the heterogenization no thanks, of our populace through immigration and multiculturalism. But the most important factor was always prosperity. Comfort, no thank you, creates aspiration and allows one's thoughts to move from food and shelter to rights, freedoms, and a better life for our children. It created, ladies and gentlemen, a middle class, the real drivers of social progress, lying between those who want change, no thank you, and can't have it, and those who can have change but don't want it. No, thank you. Ireland's economic progress is Fianna Fáil's greatest victory and is the biggest factor in our change. Were there mistakes, no thank you, in the 1930s? Possibly. What we have to realise is that they were corrected, they were moved upon, and Ireland became a better place because of them. You cannot hold this over Fianna Fáil when Sean Lemass decided to come in and decided things needed to be changed. Abandonment of protection, the embracing of free trade, tax concessions for foreign companies which went back as far as 1958, an educated workforce which created through the free education for everyone in the 1960s. All Fianna Fáil policies, all instrumental in its transformation. No, thank you. But probably entry into something called the EEC in 1973 was our biggest change. That was also a change brought about the work of two Fianna Fáil governments, one led by Lemass, one led by Lynch. They'll tell you that Fine Gael could have done the exact same thing. I don't agree. I think because of the place that exists within the heart, no thank you, of Fianna Fáil, and because Fianna Fáil fundamentally understands the Irish people, that we move beyond. Because it was only when the natural successors to Lemass's policies in the 1960s were brought about after 25 years of oil crisis and political instability, and I will take Shona quickly in a second on this, is that's when we brought in things like free corporation, or no corporation tax, free tertiary education, Bertie took the reins and Ireland once again saw prosperity and moved forward. We've had two Celtic Tigers in this country, both of them were because of Fianna Fáil. The Celtic Tiger too rocketed us into the 21st century as a 21st century nation. Yes.
Why are these things mutually exclusive? Why can't we have progress and integrity?
I didn't catch the last word, sorry?
And integrity.
I'll tell you why. Because the Irish people don't want it. Because the Irish people don't want what the intelligentsia want. The Irish people are conservative and stubborn, and it takes a long time for any change to occur. Let's talk about that in the second point. No, thank you, Fianna Fáil. Was Charles Haughey corrupt? Yes. Has Ireland occasionally lost its way under Fianna Fáil rule? Yes. But name me any party that has been in power as long and as often as Fianna Fáil that has had a spotless record, because none exist. We need to perceive Fianna Fáil through its entire existence, through its impact on the Irish population over the entirety of time. And it's important to note the difference between populism of electoral policy and the pragmatism of governance. Yes, they targeted extreme localization of politics. Yes, they advocated a special place for the church. But the opposition forget, because that's what Ireland was like. Ireland was local, Ireland was rural, and Ireland was Catholic. Surely a democratic government is supposed to give the people inherently what they want. They perceived, above everything else, that there was a role of the legislative was to create the laws people wanted first and shape society's values second. The reason why Fianna Fáil has been so successful because it recognises that the Irish people are conservative, that the Irish people are stubborn. This is not something that the opposition seem to have forgotten tonight. This is something that Fine Gael never truly got. This is why attempts to shove modernisation down the throats of people, such as the 1986 divorce referendum, always failed. Ireland is, has and always will be more than just what the intelligentsia want. Niamh told us that Fianna Fáil could have been better. No, it couldn't, because this is the party we wanted and this is the party that we deserve. But note, however, that even though external change was slow, Fianna Fáil had internal changes, like large numbers of women in the early days, like Countess Markievicz chairing the first meeting of Fianna Fáil. Each one of us grew up, ladies and gentlemen, in a different Ireland. But each one of us now lives in a better Ireland, one more, infinitely more diverse, infinitely more prosperous, with more opportunities. The ship of Ireland has sailed across the sea of history to some unknown destination, but Fianna Fáil has always been the undercurrent, gently nudging us in the right direction, allowing us to get where we need to go, and for that we owe them our gratitude, and that is why I propose.
Thank you, Sean. And now for the opposition, I call on Michael McGrath from King's Inns.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ireland has changed a lot in the last 100 years. A century ago, we didn't have an economy which was diverse and allowed us to compete on a world stage. Now, as far as I can make out, we don't have an economy at all. In 1916, we fought tooth and nail for the right to govern ourselves. Now, we don't even have the right to vote in the X Factor. In the early half of the 20th century, ladies and gentlemen, thousands of Irish men and women took to the streets to protest at poor pay and working conditions. And yet last year, there was barely a stir when McDonald's stopped making the Cream Egg McFlurry. I was very annoyed. Ladies and gentlemen, the debate thus far has focused on Fianna Fáil's hunger for power. And the proposition have agreed that all throughout its 84-year history, Fianna Fáil has pandered to the Irish people to keep itself in power. Now, for my part, I would say there's nothing inherently wrong in a political party seeking power. But my argument is that Fianna Fáil, in its quest for this power, has debased itself, it has debased Ireland, it's utterly lowered our expectations of what we can achieve of ourselves and of our politicians, and in its vagueness has created fatal short-termism and a cult of leadership, a cult of personality around its leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, this debate is very much a question of them and us. We are the people and they are the party. And Fianna Fáil always takes care of Fianna Fáil, regardless of the consequences for the rest of us. Fianna Fáil started off with a simple set of beliefs. Beliefs in the national cause, in the restoration of the nation, in the integrity of small communities. And the genius of Fianna Fáil, as we've heard, is that these beliefs were vague enough to appeal to everyone and vague enough to exclude no one. And the early Fianna Fáil leaders, like De Valera and Lemass, were at the outset very much men in the 1916 mould, men of high ideals. But even at a very early stage, they began to realise that the position of power was what they relished so much, and that any unpopular ideals could be viewed as unnecessary. For instance, as we've heard, their initial objection to taking the oath of allegiance. For instance, the fact that they so easily forsook the ideals of true civil liberty and equality by colluding for so long with the Catholic Church. No, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Fianna Fáil perfected this tactic of conveniently abandoning ideals all down through its history, until gradually we came to Bertie Ahern, a man for whom pragmatism was everything and power was all important. Sean spoke about the evolution of Ireland. Well, if we look at the evolution of Fianna Fáil over the last 84 years, no thank you, we've seen an evolution where one by one, these high ideals were seen as dead weight and cast off to allow the ship to fare better in each political storm. Fianna Fáil long ago jettisoned any real sense of direction in favour of simply being in power. Ladies and gentlemen, Fianna Fáil is hollow. And it's this lack of ideals, no thank you, which has made the cult of leadership so important to the party. That because Fianna Fáil is so vague, that all its followers have to cling to is the fact that their leader, be it Dev, be it Haughey, be it Ahern, that person is right. Yes, Neil.
Because Fianna Fáil is so vague, it can bring everybody along with it, like now, because it has all those sectors behind it.
Yes, Neil, we've heard this from the proposition before, that Fianna Fáil essentially got rid of the dogma of high ideals because that was what was best for Ireland. That's how they could best achieve their aims. But the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, that they replaced it with a new dogma, and that was power. And that was all important, and the Irish people didn't come into that equation. And ladies and gentlemen, it's because of this lack of clear policies that Fianna Fáil's only response in a crisis will be a short-term one, with painful consequences when they prove misguided, as they always have done with Fianna Fáil. So for instance, in the late 50s, we saw the failure of Fianna Fáil's policy of self-sufficiency. In the 60s, we saw the party finally realising the emptiness of its rhetoric concerning partition and the national question. And this sort of short-term thinking continued all throughout Fianna Fáil's history, until most recently we saw chronic ineptitude at managing the economy. Well, thank you. For years we'd heard how Fianna Fáil was presiding over the greatest economic boom our country had ever seen. And we now know that Fianna Fáil was in no way in control of the Celtic Tiger. The reality is, saying that Fianna Fáil was in control of the boom is like saying that the air hostess was in control of the jumbo jet, ladies and gentlemen. It's like saying that Ringo was crucial to the Beatles. It's like saying that Gunther, who owned the coffee shop in Friends, was a crucial character. It's just not true, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, Fianna Fáil holds on to power by tapping into our fear. And we've heard how, we've heard how Fianna Fáil, from the proposition, how Fianna Fáil really understands the Irish people. And they know what we fear most. They know that we fear uncertainty and insecurity, that we fear for our families, that we fear for our future. Fianna Fáil knows this fear, and when times are good, they instill this fear by telling us that Fianna Fáil is the only reason for this. And when times are bad, they tell us it will only get worse unless we stick with Fianna Fáil. And Sean told us how we still always vote for Fianna Fáil. No, thank you. But if we look at, for instance, the difference between Fianna Fáil in opinion polls and elections, they always fare better in elections than they do in opinion polls. And that proves that, ladies and gentlemen, we don't like them, we don't trust them, but we're too afraid to not vote for them. In beholding the fear of the Irish people, Fianna Fáil sees only the opportunity for political gain. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that a political party should be a set of ideas which we feel we can get behind, and a group of people who we are confident can lead us. And all throughout its history, Fianna Fáil has failed on both of these counts. The Irish people has been so perpetually disappointed by Fianna Fáil, so browbeaten, that we no longer expect any better from our politicians. No, thank you. We no longer expect any dignity, any credibility, any transparency from our politicians. We no longer expect, for instance, no corruption. We simply hope for as little corruption as possible. No, thank you. We no longer expect no unnecessary quangos. We just hope for as few unnecessary quangos as possible. We no longer expect to see the dignity of office upheld, ladies and gentlemen. We just hope for as few Willie O'D-related incidents as possible. So what are the effects of these lowered expectations? And this is really the crux of the matters, ladies and gentlemen. It's the fact that, for instance, Bertie Ahern somehow polled higher in opinion polls after being exposed for corruption, that we don't expect Fianna Fáil to be clean anymore. And more spectacularly, there's a wider trickle-down effect for the rest of us. There's the fact that we don't prosecute white-collar crime in this country. For example, bank directors, whom we know to have broken the law, because we no longer expect to see the people who run our country being brought to justice, because Fianna Fáil has so successfully portrayed accountability as something beneath a politician. And yes, Willie O'D resigned yesterday, but he's still a TD. And do we seriously expect that any charges for perjury are going to be brought against him? No, because they never are. Ladies and gentlemen, Baudelaire wrote that the devil's greatest trick was to make the world believe that he didn't exist. Well, the greatest trick that Fianna Fáil ever played was to make us believe that they could do no better, ladies and gentlemen. We've achieved a lot in the last 84 years as a country. But if you accept that this is the best that Ireland can be, with our never-ending corruption scandals, with our chronic short-termism, with the fact that our main political party so long ago lost any sense of moral centre, if you accept all of this, then be happy with Fianna Fáil. For my part, I believe that Fianna Fáil is a disgrace to this country, and maybe we don't realise it, but we deserve better. I beg to oppose.
Thank you, Michael. And now for the proposition from the Philip TCD, Angus O'Caron.
Lord Trimble, ladies and gentlemen, dewy-eyed idealism is all we've gotten from the opposition. Fianna Fáil could have done better. Fianna Fáil are corrupt. Fianna Fáil have sometimes not done as well as they should have. Ladies and gentlemen, this is true of all politics. If we are going to be honest about our history, and if we're going to be honest about this debate, then we have to evaluate them on the basis of what we've done. This is a debate about democracy, ladies and gentlemen. When we speak of Ireland in this debate, ladies and gentlemen, we speak, of course, of the Irish Free State and its successor, the Irish Republic, in whose evolution from one to the other, Fianna Fáil has played no small part. When we ask the question, whether we owe Fianna Fáil a debt of gratitude, we must first ask what they stand for as a party. What are their ideals? I think they can be summed up in 3 words, ladies and gentlemen. Democracy, nationalism, and peace. They laid the foundations of our state as we know it today. They tackled the spectre of armed insurgency that threatened this state's very existence, and they helped bring peace to this island. I don't want to engage in historical tit-for-tat. I want to look at a few things that Fianna Fáil have done, that notwithstanding any of the things that they may have done badly, and notwithstanding any of the things they may have failed at or have done better, stand to their credit, for which alone we owe them a debt of gratitude, ladies and gentlemen. Because I think somebody can do something that we owe them a debt of gratitude, and yet do everything else wrong. And for me, that is Fianna Fáil. I want to talk about their role in the creation of our democracy and their role in the defence of the state and the defence of peace. Fianna Fáil entered government in 1932. So once in government, how did they proceed? They took a nascent democracy with shaky foundations and made them firm. One of the major failings of the early Free State was the 1922 Constitution, ladies and gentlemen. The chief function of a constitution in any state is to define and restrain the powers of government, making them fixed unless subject to change by the people. However, the 1922 Constitution was different. For a brief period of 8 years, it allowed the government to amend it by ordinary legislation. What did the Commonwealth government do, ladies and gentlemen? They used the self-same power to extend that to a period of 16 years. Effectively, ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution of 1922 was no fetter on the power of government. What more evidence do we need of this than the Article 2A they inserted into the Constitution, which allowed summary trying of all citizens in military courts? The penalty on conviction was death, ladies and gentlemen. This is an abuse of power that we do not expect in a democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, how did Fianna Fáil respond to this? They did 2 things, ladies and gentlemen. No, thank you. Firstly, De Valera and his government used this power to remove nearly all vestiges of British control from the Constitution. They removed the oath of allegiance. They removed external control, something the people and their national spirit demanded and respected. But far more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, they ended this state of affairs and returned the safeguard of a democratic constitution amendable only by the people in 1937. Pretty strange behaviour for a party whose only goal is a thirst for power, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't seem characteristic, or it doesn't seem to hold true with what the opposition is telling us. Actually, I will take you in. I have your point, Ian. I have your point. Yeah, it reflected a Catholic Ireland, ladies and gentlemen, and the people voted in favour of it. The point being is that the difference between what came before and what came after is that the people could now amend it by referendum, that we now had a say at the ultimate level in our democracy. That's the respect for democracy that Fianna Fáil engendered in our nation. Before that, we had autocracy, ladies and gentlemen, where the government, the elected government, could do whatever they wished, where their powers were not fettered in any meaningful sense. And it's that commitment to democracy that I think stands above anything else Fianna Fáil has done. And let's look at this constitution that they criticise and vilify. In the same article where it provides for the special position of the Catholic Church in 1937, it laid out explicitly protections for many faiths, including, most notably, the Jewish faith, ladies and gentlemen. Think of when this happened in the international context. 1935, 2 years before, you had the Nuremberg Laws, ladies and gentlemen. Here we see a party taking a stand and leading a people towards a pluralist, nationalist